الموتى تعانق دمعة الفكر تناجي الله في صبر وترجو رحمة تسري فعاش القلب إخلاصا وصرت تحوم كالطير تحلق في ثقافات وتنهل من ربى الخير.
Well, as we've told you, Israel has reportedly approved thousands of settler units in the occupied territories. According to Israeli media, Tel Aviv will construct 4,416 settler units in several areas, including East Jerusalem Al-Quds. The units will be constructed in 3 different neighborhoods of the Holy City. Israeli settlements are illegal under international law. Israel is defying international calls for a halt to the settlement in construction plans. Now, to discuss that more, we have 2 guests that are joining us today. Stephen Sahiouni, senior journalist and commentator, joining us live from Beirut, and also Ryan Dawson, author and peace activist, who is joining us live from Osaka. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us on this edition of the News Review. Now, let's begin with Mr. Sahiouni. Well, we're hearing here and there that Israelis are expanding their settlement activities, despite the fact that we know under a UN mandate these settlements are illegal. Why do you think, especially in these recent years, especially the past 2 years, Israel has been expanding its settlement activities? Also, it has been demolishing Palestinian homes and forcing Palestinians out of their homes, particularly in East Jerusalem Al-Quds. Let's start with Mr. Sahiouni.
In the beginning, since the first day of the Zionist movement occupying Palestine, they have been stealing land and demolishing houses, schools, and doing the worst kind of murders against the Palestinian people. But in the last 2 years, especially with the Trump administration, that are giving fully support to the Israeli occupation to do anything they want, either inside of Palestine or covering them in the Security Council and covering them and protecting them from not being punished in the international law. Because they are being, by them demolishing the houses, also by doing all these massacres, they are violating international law, they are violating the, sorry, okay. There's a problem in the voice.
There seems to be some techno. Go ahead, please, Mr. Sahiouni. We can hear you.
Okay. Yeah. Also, they have been the American administration have been supported the Israeli occupation, doing all of these massacres, doing all of these stealing this land. The Israelis, they can do anything they want as long as they have the Americans and the Europeans backing them up, and that is the #1 reason why they have the guts to do all of this, because there's no one to stop them. And we've seen in February 15 the Israeli occupation and the Americans sitting with the Arab countries and the Arab Gulf, and they were sitting together, and they have a relationship now between each other. So there is no one in this region and in this world to stop the Israeli occupation except 2 countries, and that is Syria, that's coming out of 8 years of war, also the Islamic Republic of Iran. Those 2 countries, they are the only 2 countries standing in the face of Israel and standing with the rights of the Palestinian people.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sahiouni. Let's turn to Mr. Ryan Dawson from Osaka. Mr. Dawson, what do you think is the ultimate plan of Israelis? What are they planning to do by expanding these settlements, especially in the occupied territories and the regions in which the UN has specifically specified that it is illegal to expand these settlements?
Well, we don't have to speculate that we know what they're doing. They're annexing the territory because they want a Jewish state. And by Jewish state, they mean exactly what that sounds like. It is they set up ethnic colonies. I don't call them settlements. I call them racial colonies. They are not only demolishing houses, now they're confiscating houses. They're kicking Palestinian families out of the homes, and they're rewarding those to settlers and even taking their possessions, their clothing, everything they own, and they just hand it over to the right category of people, the correct ethnic religious category in their own minds. These are God's chosen lunatics who believe that God is a real estate agent and this land belongs to them according to mythology. So they have every right to be as violent as they want, shoot people's kids, have snipers shooting people in the knees and in the groin and in the eyes, or sometimes just killing them and nothing happens. There's over 300 people murdered since last March. Nothing is done about that. That's just in Gaza. They expand their settlements in the West Bank, and of course they want East Jerusalem. And that's what they're concentrating on now. They have an election in 18 days. There are, 4 parties basically, but really only 2. David Sheen put a nice acronym called SIDE. S for segregation, I for integrating, which is not going to happen, D for domination, and E for elimination. And the majority of the Israeli public support either domination or elimination. They want to annex the territory or dominate Palestinians, throw their kids in prison. They can torture people. They just raided an elementary school, shot up an elementary school and raided it with tear gas. Moments after their international monitors are gone, the Israeli army raids an elementary school. Of course, they're going to confiscate land and houses, and they have the full backing of the United States and Europe, many of whose populations are ignorant to any of this going on.
Mr. Dawson? Well, there seems to be some technical difficulties there. Now, moving on, the leader of the Palestinian resistance movement, Hamas, has strongly condemned Israel's latest measures against worshippers in Jerusalem Al-Quds. Ismail Haniyeh says Tel Aviv is trying to pave the way for the permanent occupation of the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound. The Hamas leader has also accused some Arab leaders warming of ties with Israel for the regime's latest actions. He has called on Arabs to halt all acts of normalizing ties with Tel Aviv. Israeli forces have recently prevented Palestinian worshippers from entering the Al-Aqsa Mosque. The move has led to clashes that have left dozens of Palestinians injured. Once again, to continue this discussion, we're joined by Mr. Stephen Sahyouni from Beirut. Now, Mr. Sahyouni, why is Israel stopping worshippers from entering Al-Aqsa Mosque? These are people who are simply there to worship.
The Israeli occupation, they have trying, and this is their plan, by doing the religious situation by making Israel a Jewish state, and scaring their people that around you is only Muslims and we have to make our own Jewish state, and they try, and under the name of religion, they stop people from going into their under what they say, to go into the mosque, because they have their, as they claim, they have their holy thing, their holy wall in Jerusalem, in Jerusalem. So they stop the Palestinians from going into doing their prayers, but they do not. But at the same time, they let their people to come. They do not respect religion. They don't respect other people's religion as they claim. And as I told you, they are trying to do, and this is their #1 goal, by breaking up Syria into religious. They wanted to make Syria into religious contents. That's why, and now that's why they want to put Israel as the Jewish state, and to try to demolish the Palestinians in Jerusalem and making Jerusalem as the state, and they're getting the full support by the United States and the United States administration.
Thank you very much for pointing that out. Thank you very much, Mr. Sahyouni, because that is basically what we were going to get to. Mr. Dawson, let's pick it up from there. How much do you think Donald Trump's support, and also some Arab states warming towards the Israelis, how much has that emboldened the Israelis, especially considering attacking worshippers now in Al-Aqsa Mosque?
Yes, really every U.S. president, but especially Donald Trump, because Donald Trump moved the U.S. embassy to Jerusalem. And for some reason, people think if the U.S. moves its embassy, that's akin to moving the capital. Jerusalem's not the capital of Israel. Tel Aviv is the capital of Israel, but they want to claim Jerusalem as theirs. Jerusalem is supposed to be a shared city for the three large religions. The major religions, Christianity and Islam, and a very small religion, Judaism. But they want that exclusively, and they do this to harass the Palestinians on purpose. They do this to agitate them, to try to provoke a reaction, so that they can justify their ethnic cleansing, land grabbing, annexation, blockade, and torture, and jailing, and shooting children. There is no justification for it, and they don't want anybody to even be able to have religious freedom. And America fully backs them. Donald Trump just signed off on $3.8 billion to the apartheid state, which is utterly disgusting. But they have failed in Syria. They wanted to divide Syria up along religious sectarian division, and they've lost. The terrorist proxies are up in Idlib, and they've outlasted the U.S. Patience to do Israel's bidding. Syria is going to be Syria again. Assad is going to stay, and there's nothing the U.S. and Israel can do about it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ryan Dawson, author and peace activist, joining us live from Osaka, and Mr. Steven Sahiouni, senior journalist and commentator, joining us live from Beirut. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for your elaborations, and thank you for following this edition of the News Review with us.